Good morning. Happy Friday. I can't believe that we're even live right before the holidays and we're not all just in like total vacation mode right now. I'm impressed. Sydney, thank you for joining Andy and I today. Are you just like checked out for the holidays or is this like a fun time for you?
This is actually like a really busy time for me. I really wish I could be checked out, but with the New Year's resolutions and so much, so many people looking to make habit changing in the new year, this is a busy time.
I could imagine. It's also been busy for us, when it comes to business matchmaking and love matchmaking, because I think actually a lot of people try to get ahead of the January New Year's resolution crowd, which I think will be an exciting thing to chat about. But let me introduce you, Sydney, so people know why we're
Yeah.
talking about New Year's resolutions in the first place. So for 20 years, Sydney was told by conventional doctors, "You're fine," while they treated her for countless symptoms like allergies, depression, chronic fatigue, sinus infections, headaches, bloating, painful intercourse, and so much more. Finally, after 2 decades of always feeling sick and being gaslit by doctors, she finally took her health into her own hands and completely healed herself by getting to the root cause and changing her lifestyle habits. Oh my God,
Yeah.
tell us your secrets.
That is what I'm trying to do because I am trying to share my secrets because it was, as it sounds, like a really tough journey, a really tough 20 years,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally. And over the past 5 years, I've had to do it all myself. And anyone else who feels this way, I'm like, I don't want them to have to go through what I went through, not only the gaslighting and just being, totally dismissed, but now if you're ready to actually start to feel better, there's so much information out there, especially when it comes to health and wellness. It's like what works, what doesn't work, what's going to work for me personally. And I've had to dig through all of that and just basically used myself as a guinea pig.
Oh my gosh. And to go through that for such a long period of time, I mean, it must have been super frustrating. And then how empowering now to help people so it doesn't have to take them that long.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And being, it started when I was 18 and I'm in college and I'm trying to, I'm also living a college lifestyle, which is not even healthy for anyone, unfortunately. But, and then, all these symptoms showing up and just kind of thinking, being young and just kind of thinking like, oh, well, maybe this is just how you feel right now or whatever. And then being in my 20s and 30s and it took me actually a really long time to get fed up and realize that the people with the white jackets on don't know everything. Like as crazy as that is, you go to your doctor because they are the expert, because they're the professional, because you trust their opinion and they've gone through all the schooling and they are the experts, supposedly, right? But after being told so long, like there's nothing wrong with you, and knowing in my body, like, no, I feel like awful all day, every day. Like I've got to trust myself over the experts.
Right. And I feel like that probably was a weird feeling because we're taught our whole lives, like, okay, you're sick, go to the doctor,
Mhm.
and there's maybe no other option if you still are feeling bad. So, tell us, how do you work with people and how do they find you? Is it kind of like when they're like, okay, I've tried everything?
That's my hope, is like, I'm not saying, necessarily try me first. I
Hmm.
am saying when you've tried everything else, come to me. So, there are some people who are going to be treated with conventional medicine and be feel good and be fine. And so maybe I'm not the right person for them. But if you've tried everything, like you feel like you've exhausted all options with conventional medicine, then yes, like that is when I hope people find me.
And what does it look like to kind of shift your lifestyle? I guess what are some of the things that maybe worked for you? Was it eating differently? Was it sleeping differently? At least I'm kind
Yeah.
of curious, like, what are the things that you advise people on?
Yeah, like for example, I would every time I would eat, I'd get bloated. And so, I'm a thin person who's always been thin and fit. And also talking to my friends and family, I'd eat, a few bites on my plate and I'd be totally distended. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I feel so full and so uncomfortable. And people, like friends and family, would also dismiss me because they'd be like, oh, that's you bloated. Okay, whatever. So, like I was being dismissed by doctors, dismissed by friends and family. And that was really hard. And so, like, just for example, with that, I went to see a doctor. I was told I had no food sensitivities. So it's like, okay, well, then why am I feeling this way? Well, it turns out there is a spectrum for everything. And so you don't have to be celiac to have a food sensitivity or intolerance or allergy to gluten. And so if your celiac comes back negative, you still might need to cut out gluten, for example. So, or, cut out dairy or cut out added sugar or these things that maybe like I said, conventional medicine can't really test for, but you can make that modification in your life. And you can, within 2 days or 2 weeks, you will know very quickly if that is an issue for you, regardless of if the tests come back positive or negative. So I go through people's lifestyles. I hear, because I've had every symptom under the sun, basically, I listen to them. I hear what they've been going through. I get, I listen to their background. And then I look at food. I look at exercise. I look at meditation. I look at intermittent fasting and some cold therapy as like kind of my 5 pillars of health, and where I start with people. And either we will, depending on how aggressive they want to be, we'll start with one area, like I just mentioned, maybe food sensitivities and just kind of cutting things out initially. And then maybe adding on some of these other things and eventually, hopefully, getting to all 5 every day.
Do you find that a lot of times it's balancing the crossover of side effects from, for example, a lot of people take mental health drugs, SSRIs, for example, for depression, but these are known for, when I started taking these medications, I immediately gained 30 pounds. I didn't sleep for a couple of months. I had food and sex issues. And then if you also have an autoimmune disorder or you're going through a pregnancy or something like that, you have this massive crossover of the side effects. So for example, if someone explored, like you mentioned, an anti-inflammatory diet, it may at least lessen the perpetuating of these crossovers that people can't really avoid, because some of those medications you can't stop taking.
Yeah, exactly. There are always so many layers to everyone's stories, like you just said, like the medications. And then that also leads to extra stress, because now you're stressed that you're not getting the sleep, or that your relationship is being, hindered by certain elements of life and things like that. So there's always like these layers upon layers. And that's why if we work on lowering inflammation, which is what those 5 pillars of health do, they're science backed to all around lower inflammation, that will help, because to your point, Andy, like all of these things increase inflammation in our body. And what I tell people is, like, it's not acute inflammation, right? Where you get like a cut on your hand and you can see the inflammation. It's this chronic, underlying, unseen, unfelt inflammation that is actually causing these problems. And I think if more people could live that way, I know it's easier said than done, but that's why I'm hopefully here to help.
So one thing I wanted to have you talk about in the live stream, because I know it's something you know a ton about, excuse me. Everybody's really hyped up on Wim Hof right now and the cold stuff. You do a lot of work with contrast therapies, that being ice baths, alternating with sauna treatment. What is the real benefit of that? I know there's a ton to circulation and heart rate and blood pressure and all the things. Can you talk about the benefits of that and how you've been implementing it?
Yeah. So I started doing it daily in 2020 or 2019, I think, end of 2019, 2020. And what I noticed immediately was, for me, what I felt without even knowing the science, just being like, I know this is good for me, let me do this. What I felt immediately was a mood boost, which when we're talking about anxiety and depression and just mood disorders, immediately for at least a few hours or like the rest of that day, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a whole new person. I can take on the world. I have this energy I've never felt before. My mood was totally enhanced and boosted. Then I also noticed my sleep was much better. And then as I started researching it and getting into the science and seeing it, circulation improves, you burn more calories. It's helps flush your lymphatic system, which, when you're feeling sluggish or you have some of these other inflammatory issues, it's because your body isn't detoxing and turning over quick enough. So this contrast therapy specifically helps flush out your lymphatic system. Nothing like cold puts you in the present moment. And when we talk about anti-inflammatory, which also being in the cold and contrast therapy is, it also gets you centered and present and breathing, which if we're, that is a form of meditation, really, even though you're stressed, which also putting this quick, short amount of good stress on your body also helps your immune system. It kicks your immune system into gear. So especially this time of year when we're all fighting all of these cold and flu symptoms, boosting your immune system is like number one. So, it burns fat. I think I said it burns extra calories, but burns fat, like the bad fat and extra calories. So people who also are maybe having trouble with those last 5 pounds, 5 or 10 pounds, they've hit the plateau. I also say, try getting into the cold, a cold shower every day, because it also burns extra calories and boosts your metabolism. So to me, it's like there's no downside. The downside of cold is it's uncomfortable and it puts you, you hate it. You're like, I want to run. But that's literally the only downside.
And I feel like right now, it's like -5 in Denver. We could just go stand outside for a little bit. Would that have the same effect?
It would, actually. It would. If you could be outside, so you're not getting frostbite, of course, because it's
right.
negative. But if you're totally bundled up and covered and you could lower your body temperature or your skin temperature, I should say, it will have the same effect. Yeah.
That
so
is
sometimes
super
even in
cool.
the winter here in Colorado, you see people outside in a hot tub and then they go lay in the snow. It's really the same thing. Yeah.
And you can do that in your regular shower going from a hot to cold, right? You don't have to have an ice bath.
Exactly. And the 5 pillars of health that I talk about with my clients and to people they cost you no additional money. So eating one vegan meal a day costs you no additional money. You have to eat anyway. Taking a cold shower, no additional money. You're going to take a shower anyway. Meditating, free to everybody. Fasting for 12 hours, free. And exercising. You can do that outside. You can take a 30-minute walk every day. So, I tell people you don't have to spend a ton of money to get healthy, actually.
Right, because I think a lot of people think, and obviously we're coming up on New Year's resolution time where everyone joins an expensive gym or pays for some food delivery service or whatever it might be. So it's good to know that you don't have to spend a ton of money. But I think sometimes it seems easier. It's like, oh, well, I'll just spend a ton of money on this and then it will help me, rather than almost tapping into the free things that are easier for some reason.
Yeah, right. People don't think about it. And that's kind of why I've come up with this 2-week anti-inflammatory guide. It's just like a DIY guide. So that the free everything's available to you, but you're like, okay, great. So, but where do I start? You still need a guide or someone to help you through that. Even though I'm saying don't join an expensive gym or do the food delivery. I have 2 weeks of recipes. I have 2 weeks of workouts. I have tips and tricks on how to meditate, how to do your cold showers. It's kind of all in this guide.
Amazing.
Yeah, which I hope is super helpful for people. I'm also, I think in January, potentially going to do a live one where we check in I still have to figure out how this would look. But instead of a fully DIY, some sort of hybrid program where you're doing it on your own daily, but there's still some check-ins, or we're doing something together, or yeah, I've got to think through that a little bit.
Ooh, and if you're watching and want to participate or give Sydney some ideas, like comment,
Absolutely. Like,
please.
what would work best for everyone else, Maybe the DIY is like not accountable enough.
So, as an entrepreneur, what has it been like to turn this into a business? Obviously, you mentioned you've been studying the science and fitness behind these various elements for years, but when you wanted to start creating event experiences for other people, were there trial and error? Have you found the perfect formula? What is the way to motivate people?
Yeah. For me, turning this into a business, I was actually encouraged by a lot of people close to me to just start sharing my story, because I think people, one, saw the transformation that I went through. My family specifically, like, cannot believe how much healthier I am now. And friends and family were just like, I think, especially it was kind of, COVID times and health was on everyone's mind. They just said, you should start sharing this information. So that's really how it started. And then I thought, my background is in events, and that comes naturally to me. And I think when it comes to habit change and people need to try it, and trying it in a safe group and community where you can ask any questions, where it's like there's no right or wrong, to me just felt like the best next step. Like, I love to host events. I love to create an environment where people feel safe and comfortable and want to try these things, and be available in person to just create these connections, I think is really where, and that's why I'm going to do, I think, retreats in 2023. So we can have more than just a few hours together. We can spend 4 or 5 days together where you can really practice this every day in a safe space, in a group where no question is crazy. I think things like cold therapy, people are intimidated by that. People are like, what is all this? And do I have to sit in an ice bath every day? Like, I see all these people doing that. And but it's like, it's really much more attainable and accessible. And I think through live events and retreats, that comes across more.
And you don't have to worry about looking stupid when 30 other people are freezing too.
Yeah. And like, everyone's doing it for the first time.
Well, Andy, you've witnessed some of these events, have you not? At least from the photographer point of view. Like, what has it been like watching people come together in that way?
It's definitely interesting because they're always really timid. Sydney has them now do 4 or 5 cycles of the hot and cold, or also alternating with stretching or compression boots and a couple different kind of stations. But watching people, especially when they were outdoors, doing the cold tank and like the, cow trough style, like metal bath, was pretty intense when you're doing it actually with the ice. She works with a fancy place now that's a sports recovery facility, and they have 2 hot tubs next to each other, and one is cold and one is hot. So they only have to travel like 2 feet, and they all get out at the same time. But when it was one person at a time in some of the other types of places, it's definitely, you feel like everyone's watching you and how much you're going to react. And some of them say they want to try to go for, what do you encourage them to try 2 minutes? And people usually kind of maybe work up to 5-ish. But last time there was a dude that was going for 10, and
Wow.
it was a very special.
I think people surprise themselves. And I think then, like, at the end, like Andy said, like, they're timid when they get there and they're like, what the hell? And then they see everybody struggle. And then it's like it builds a community too. And like, it gives you more self-confidence, I think.
Well, and it does need to be tailored. I mean, the guy that was going for 10 minutes was in like a special kind of zen. But you also see when everyone's trying to do 5 minutes together, some of them, there was a really petite gal at the last one who was like on the edge of passing out, who was like, I think I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
But everybody's body's different. But it is very cool to have that hype factor of helping each other through it and Sydney has facilitated opportunities to have breath work coaches with you and have people explaining how the whole process works to actually be in a meditative state and not in a fight or flight freak out
Mhm.
state whilst in the water, which is very useful.
Mhm.
Andy, have you gotten in the
I have
cold
not.
tub?
Every
Nope.
time I offer.
Oh my gosh, I've never done it either. Maybe we'll have to come to the next one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I would love it. I would love it. I'd love it.
Okay, well, we'll do a live stream follow-up. We'll go live from the ice bath.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
And I feel like something that I know, at least I have heard from a lot of people going into the new year, is they do want to build new habits, but a lot of people don't know where to start. It makes me think of the book Atomic Habits, how to kind of build new habits. Do you kind of help people with that same formula, or how do you go about helping people incorporate
I
all these
do.
things?
I mean, first we try to figure out what is the path of least resistance for them. Like what,
Mhm.
because everyone's body is different and everyone's day is different. Everyone's obstacles in their lives are different. So, kind of number one, what is the path of least resistance for them? And then there's a few tricks and tips that I give, like, can you do a reward? So, like, if you want to binge something on Netflix, you can't do it until you do X, right? Until you do your cold shower or you eat your vegan meal or whatever, right? There's always this there's this reward system. So do
Mhm.
the habit and then you get rewarded for it. That's a really good one. Like I do that in my life. Like I can't do X until like I unload the dishwasher or I fold
Yeah.
my laundry or whatever. So there's that. And then there's also this, like what support system do you have? Do you have a buddy you can do this with? Do you want to do it with me? Is there accountability? There's a few different things that I review with people and help them with in terms of actually forming the habits. One thing I've also learned a lot about is that, motivation is a really big one. And so there are wrong reasons to be motivated. So if you're motivated for the right reasons and for your health, then we talk about like enjoying the process and don't forget about the outcome, forget about the goal, forget about even being healthier. Just start to enjoy the process and know that it's going to be hard and that means you're doing it right. So when you start to complain about how hard it is, it's like, okay, well, that means you're doing it right. So you actually like kind of stop complaining. Like it's not easy. It's just not. But like once you realize it's not, and I like this process, then it becomes actually much easier.
Right. And it takes a certain amount of time. Is it like 6 to 8 weeks for things to like act for you to actually build a habit and for it to catch on? So, like you said, it won't be hard forever,
It's
hopefully.
not going to be hard forever. There are some studies that say 15 days, 21 days, 30 days
Yeah.
to do habits. But honestly, it's actually different for everyone. Someone could form a habit in a week. It could take, 30 days or longer.
Mhm.
Um, and that's when I also reassess, like maybe this isn't the right habit for you if you're not like enjoying it or picking it up, within 2 weeks. Maybe we need to revisit it and try something else because it's like brushing your teeth every day. Nobody tells you to brush your teeth every day. You just know you have to brush your teeth every day. And it's the same thing with these habits. It's just after a certain amount of time, no one tells you to work out or to do your 12 hours of fasting. You just know I have to do that. And for me,
Mhm.
being so sick, I didn't have another choice. That's why sometimes the motivation piece is really different for different people. Like if you're very sick, you're going to be really motivated to make these changes over someone who's maybe trying to lose 10 pounds to fit into a bathing suit on their vacation, right?
Totally makes sense. And I was going to ask you too, do you ever use any of your habit building techniques for business, like in your own business, to make sure that you're doing the things you need to do and all of that?
That is such a great question. I've never thought about that. I have always been someone who's been motivated and pushed, not to get to like too sad of a story, but my childhood was a little tough. And so I've always had this drive and motivation and desire, like, and just felt like a need to like hustle and to like get stuff done. And like, there's no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not that's healthy or not is a whole nother story. But so I've never really needed to use these tactics because I've always had some like other like internal driver.
I mean, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it, comes from the most amazing place, but you're using
Right.
it to benefit you in your business.
Exactly. And in life, honestly, I've turned these maybe, these symptoms of my life into positive things that I can use.
And what about as you are kind of thinking of taking this full time, what are some of the challenges that you think you're going to have to face, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, the challenges for me, even right now, and I think moving forward, is educating people. Like, there aren't a ton of studies or science on cold therapy, for example. And it's just the way our system is set up right now. We know studies cost money, right? Like to fund us to study a study, it takes funding. So who's going to fund a study on cold water?
Someone should. That sounds interesting now that we've been talking about it.
But like when we talk about, studies in conventional medicine, they're typically funded by prescription drug companies or, pharmaceutical companies or lobbyists or, things that have like business interests in mind. Because so if they do this study, then they can say, hey, buy this product or use this service or whatever. So these things like a vegan meal or like a cold shower or 30 minutes of exercise, there is science behind it, and all the science is very promising, but it's not going to be the same amount of science that, our conventional doctors use. And so the education and explaining to people like, no, this is science backed and this is going to help you. And I can tell you this because of personal experience. Number one, I've seen it happen. But number two, here are some maybe smaller studies or studies from other countries to point to. But education just is the biggest hurdle, really. At least I think from my experience right now.
Right. I mean, I could completely see that too. Like how we started this conversation talking about how first you're like, okay, you go to a traditional doctor. So even just educating people that there is something else out there, I could see could also be a challenge.
Right. Because it's not like I'm anti-doctor.
Yeah.
It's just hey, it doesn't work for everyone, including me for 20 years. And my life story and all of the health issues I had prove that. So yeah, it's just kind of informing people there is another way.
If somebody wanted to implement something like the cold therapy daily, is it like turn your shower cold for the last 30 seconds? Do you want to end on cold or end on hot? Can you just start doing it every day? What would you say?
Well, first and foremost, I tell people whatever you're going to do is the best thing to do. That's number one.
Love that.
Yeah. And so, but the tips and tricks that I tell people are take your regular shower. And for the last, people need to start small on cold. So for the last 10 seconds, turn your dial all the way down almost before it's going to turn the water off, really. Like it has to be pretty cold, right? We get into temperatures of 30 to 50 degrees. So when you think of, 30 to 50 degrees, that's very cold. So, and it does make you want to run away, but that's okay. And that is the normal reaction. So start with 10 seconds and work your way up to a minute or 2 minutes. And when you go to the longer time, I say like rinse out your conditioner, brush your teeth, shave your legs, like do something in there. You could just stand there for 1 or 2 minutes in the cold, that's fine. But like if you're in the shower anyway, it takes no additional time once you get to the 1 or 2 minutes if you just continue to do your regular routine. And it honestly helps pass the time. So just standing there for 2 minutes seems like a lifetime.
I could imagine. Oh my God.
But like I end in cold, I just turn the dial off and I get out. But if you want to turn it back to hot for a few seconds or whatever, like that's fine. Like I said, whatever you're going to do is going to be the best. And the more and more you do it, the more like advanced you're going to get. And you're going to realize, okay, I can just end my shower with this. But you don't have to, if that's too much right now, like don't do that.
Right. It's like you can take small steps. You don't have to jump into an ice bath right away.
Exactly. There's other health benefits before sitting in like ice cubes.
And Sydney, how can people reach out to you, contact you? I know I put some links below this video if you're antsy right away.
So yeah, social media, like Instagram is the best. I'm there the most. I also can be reached by email. My Instagram is at Sydney Golden Health. And email is Sydney@YouAreGolden, the letter U, the letter R, golden.com. So those are the two best places, probably.
Perfect. And, if you're watching this and you want to reach out, you want to learn how to get into a cold shower without freaking out, contact Sydney. And if you want to build some healthy habits even before 2023 starts.
Totally.
It's an exciting time. Well, thank you for joining us on this Friday. Andy, you got anything else over there? Just want to make sure.
I don't think so. Do we have one more before the new year? I think
we have one more episode next week.
Everybody's going to have a lot of goals, so get in touch with Sydney.
Exactly. This is the time. And also the time I'm thinking I might do a challenge in February. So when you've kind of been burnt out by the January timeframe, I'm thinking maybe February is a good time to like revisit hanging on to those resolutions and new habits. So I think I'm leaning towards February to do a 2-week challenge.
Exciting. Well, keep us posted. We'll make sure to notify people about it. And thank you again, and happy holidays, everybody, for whatever you're celebrating.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always so fun to chat with you guys.
Oh, thanks, Sydney.
Have a good day, everybody.